At this point, we've set up the character framework that we'll begin with. However, I'm unable to commence writing due to a lack of knowledge regarding the intricacies and dynamics of these characters' relationships. Up until now, all we know is their respective ages. We know that Gabriela and Brenda are sisters, that Irene and Salvador are daughter and father, that Salvador and Gabriela were going to get married, and we also know that Irene and Gabriela know each other, but we still don't know what relationship exists between them. I am going to develop a questionnaire to address the information gaps and start defining more aspects of this story. These questions are based on the need to understand the intricacies of the characters' relationships. When considering the relationship dynamics within my system, it isn't essential to create a full backstory for each character. Instead, I simply complete the missing pieces of information about their connections and interactions. I made myself a questionnaire of 7 questions, and it is as follows. 1. Why didn't Gabriela and Brenda see each other? 2. How old is Salvador? How long has he been in a relationship with Gabriela? 3. How are Gabriela and Irene related? 4. What relationship might Brenda and Irene have when they meet? 5. Why did Gabriela leave Salvador at the altar? 6. What will happen in the end? 7. What do the characters do for a living? When creating this kind of questionnaire, my aim isn't to find a correct answer, but to explore thoughts. In reality, there are many instances where I create multiple possible answers for a single question in my stories. As I proceed to answer subsequent questions, it gradually becomes clear which options align best with the narrative's direction. Frequently, selecting one particular response influences or dictates the nature of the alternatives that follow. As you can see, only the characters from the system are involved in these questions. I didn't inquire about Gabriela's bond with her mother, since the mother isn't mentioned within this narrative context. While knowing their relationship might add depth to our conversation, it is unnecessary for progressing the storyline. Now let's move on and examine my responses to this survey. Why didn't Gabriela and Brenda see each other? One possible reason could be differing dynamics with their parents leading to separation. Another theory suggests a complicated romantic situation where both fell for the same person, creating tension that drove them apart. The third possibility is that they were never close, possibly being half-sisters on their mother's side. I opted for the mother's side because it's a scenario I haven't explored before, offering a fresh perspective to consider. And the last, some change in their lives. I will decide which of these 4 options I will choose once I have answered the rest of the questions. The next one is, how old is Salvador and how long has he been in a relationship with Gabriela? I wanted him to be 79 years old so he could say he wants to marry before turning 80, and I chose a 1-year relationship. I opted for a 1-year relationship for 2 reasons. Firstly, it needed to be a significant enough period for them to consider marriage. Secondly, I believe when couples reach this stage, they are more likely to make a commitment. Getting married after just a few months seems rushed. It also needed to be a short relationship, so Brenda wouldn't discover her sister's wedding plans. This way, the surprise element remains intact, keeping everyone on their toes. The third question, what relationship do Gabriela and Irene have? Irene had a hard time accepting Gabriela, and now they get along well. This harmonious bond will face a challenge when Gabriela decides to abandon Irene's father at the altar, testing their relationship's strength. The next question, what relationship might Brenda and Irene have when they meet? I chose for them to have a crush. Given that we have 3 characters, and both of their interactions with Gabriela are somewhat antagonistic, it's crucial to introduce a positive dynamic between the other 2 characters. This ensures that the narrative isn't solely focused on conflict, bringing balance and depth to the story's relationships. I decided to add a romantic angle, even though this love story won't be significant in the plot. I just want it to be noticeable and important for Irene's behavior. The next question, why did Gabriela leave Salvador at the altar? She was scared of him for a lifetime. There are 2 ways to see this phrase. On one hand, it's the classic fear of any couple, of any age, of being with one person for the rest of their life. And on the other, the fact that Salvador is notably older means that amount of life isn't the same for both, and it's something that... 6th question, what will happen at the end? Salvador falls down the stairs. I find it crucial to know the ending of stories, or at least a portion of it. This way, I can better understand the narrative and its direction. There is a thread in the story that will run from start to finish without any breaks. Regardless of the number of subplots I encounter or the events that unfold, that thread will stay unbroken, ensuring we maintain unity throughout the narrative. The seventh question is about what the characters do for a living. This is always very important to me because it defines the semantic field or theoretical framework that each of these characters will have. The references they will handle, it can even help me create metaphors or make analogies. For this story, I decided on the following occupations. Gabriela is a news anchor. Brenda will be a partner in a hostel. Irene is a painter and Salvador is a writer. Both Gabriela's and Irene's and Salvador's occupations, but I turned them into well-known figures, making the event newsworthy and of public interest, thus adding a new layer of significance and potentially appearing in the media. Also, this fame issue helps me define the answer to the first question. Why didn't Gabriela and Brenda see each other? If Gabriela started becoming famous for being on the news, a change in their lives could have been the reason for the distance. Moreover, the fact that they are half-sisters on their mother's side is a detail that helps define their characters and could be mentioned in conversation. While it doesn't affect the storyline, it provides us with deeper insight into who these characters are. Another important issue with the characters' occupations is that Irene and Brenda already have an opportunity to relate positively. If Brenda is a partner in a hostel and Irene is a painter, I could propose that Brenda wants a mural on some wall of her hostel, and then it's something Irene can help with. The main setting of my story will be Brenda's hostel. I plan to set all the dialogues in one location because I enjoy the challenge of working within a single space. This approach is something I embrace whenever possible. The hostel must be situated in a different city than where the other characters reside, adding an intriguing layer to the narrative. Irene, Gabriela, and Salvador will live in Mexico City, and the hostel will be in the city of San Luis Potosí. I chose this city for several reasons. First, because it's a city I know, and having visited, I can share some observations from my trip. Secondly, San Luis Potosí is far enough from Mexico City that it isn't feasible to travel back and forth in a single day, especially considering the drive. This distance adds a layer of complexity to the story, enhancing the narrative tension. I need Gabriela to remain in San Luis Potosí long enough for them to search for her the following day, rather than just a few hours after she has fled. While I've chosen to set all my dialogues in one location, if your story necessitates different settings, that's completely acceptable. Now that I have gathered more details to narrate this story, I can ensure it unfolds with the depth and complexity it deserves, maintaining the intended tension and intrigue throughout the narrative. I will organize the timing of my dialogues on a timeline, pinpointing when each will occur. This timeline highlights 3 specific days: Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, ensuring clarity in the sequence of events. In the previous background, I find the relationship between Gabriela and Salvador important, as well as the fact that Brenda and Gabriela haven't seen each other for several years. Saturday marks the day the wedding was meant to take place. This is significant as it's both the wedding day and the day of the escape. I plan to write 4 dialogues for this event, capturing the essence and tension of the moment as it unfolds, with 4 specific missions. However, right now, I will only mention 3 of them because I need to wait a bit for the 4th. The first dialogue is scheduled for Saturday afternoon, marking the beginning of the sequence of events. When Gabriela arrives at the hostel, it will take place between Brenda and Gabriela. On Sunday, dialogue 2 will occur when Irene arrives at the hostel looking for Gabriela. Initially, Gabriela and Irene will have a conversation, followed by a meeting between Irene and Brenda. The final dialogue is set for Monday morning, completing the sequence of events leading up to the wedding and escape. This is the moment when Gabriela decides she wants to return to win Salvador back. Then we receive a call notifying Irene about Salvador's accident, adding to the unfolding events. The 4th dialogue, which I didn't place on this timeline, will be a monologue because I'm also interested in telling you some things that happen when a character speaks alone. I will place this monologue after having completed the first 3 dialogues. I now understand which character should deliver the monologue and recognize areas needing more details. The final dialogue will guide me further in this process. As I mentioned, each dialogue will explore a unique mission, adding depth to the narrative.